the dungeon, and I want to show you guys how the mold went together for the 0 degree base plate. This is the master. It's a sculpt out of Sculpey 2. It's been hardened. It was based on the Randall R2 base plate design, loosely, just the geometry I was using, the Randall hanger. The sculpt took about 8 hours, and then there was some cleanup afterwards, so probably a 10-hour sculpt in total. So let's get at this. I've never cast anything out of silicone before. I made a mold or cast out of resin, so I am excited to try, but a little nervous, and I'll tell you why in a second. In the back room here, we've got a very angry Pixar lamp interrogating some clay, making it nice and soft for us. We're going to use that to build up the seams between the parts of our mold. Okay. So, the thing that I'm nervous about is while I'm fairly good at making stuff, I haven't ever made a mold like this before, and there's a bit of a complication. It has to be, I'm pretty sure, it has to be a 3-part mold, and actually I think that's why 0 degree base plates just aren't really made outside of machining. People make them, I've seen them come up online occasionally as projects or as like precision type trucks. They're kind of a niche piece of hardware to begin with. So I think part of that is the difficulty of manufacturing. They might be a little bit, well, they might be a little bit more widely used if they were easier to make. But what happens is you get the holes that are important for this, for the geometry of the base plate, are perpendicular to each other. So you've got the mounting holes, which go in this axis, and you've got the kingpin, which goes in this axis, and by the nature of the truck, because it's a 0 degree, the pivot cup goes that way. And when you're demolding, that means you'd have to pull the halves of a mold, a 2-part mold, in impossible directions. You'd have to go this way to get these holes accurately. So the mold would have to split probably along this seam, maybe here, which is what I'm going to do for part of the mold. But then doing that, this would get caught. You have this really severe underhang. And this is actually something that I've been trying to figure out for, I mean, as long as I've been working on this, is how exactly am I going to do my seam lines. But I think working in silicone to begin with is going to be helpful because it's got some flex to it, and I think I've got it figured out. But yeah, that leaves me, in my first molding project, having to do a 3-part mold. I was rewatching the entire mold making and casting playlist on Punished Props last night. Somewhere in that playlist mentioned 3-part molds, and I forget the exact quote, but called them something like black magic. So I'm a little worried that I'm probably getting in over my head for a first timer, but we'll see what happens. My first thought is that knowing this is going to be out of resin, I want to tilt the base plate, regardless of what the seam lines end up being, because the bubbles are going to rise, and the bubbles, I want them to rise to here. This is, for the most part, the highest point. If we tilt this up and have the pore hole come through from the top of the part that holds the pivot cup, and I probably want to run a sprue from down here. I think if we do that, we will have to worry less about bubbles getting caught, or at least significant ones. So I'm going to build up a base, and then the first seam line that I'm going to worry about, I'm going to start building the mold out, is going to go along the edges, and then up to the top of these holes. So it'll be the mounting holes and the base plate, and that'll give us a flush surface. And then we can essentially just build another 2-part mold on top of that to deal with this geometry, which I'm thinking is probably going to split here, or maybe, I don't know, something like that. But we'll get this part done first, and then we'll see how the rest of it looks. I'm looking at this right now, and I'm just thinking, I want to make sure that there's a significant amount of silicone below the part, so that this doesn't become a weak point in the mold. So I do think, I feel like I'm overusing the clay, but I do think I'm going to build it up quite significantly to make sure that we've got probably like a ½ inch or so underneath this, what's going to be the very bottommost part of the mold. I'm going to over-engineer this. The part is over-engineered, and I want the mold to be over-engineered too, and I'm hoping that that's going to help with the whole first timer never made a mold thing, as if I'm really careful and cautious, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We'll see how that goes. I think we can get this level and then seat it. I think I'm going to plug the holes first, and then I can work around my seams and we can do registration. Okay, that's all right. That could be better. But I think for our purposes it's going to work okay. It's not perfectly smooth. Do I need to worry about that? I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Clean, clean, clean. So like. The decision to make this the proof of concept without actually going forward with a fully mechanically proper part was because I'm waiting on some hardware so that I can make that part, and I got impatient. I didn't want to wait. So I started working on this. And this will be good because it will give me an indication about the geometry. It'll show me if my assumptions are correct, and it'll give me a sense of how it feels to ride one of these trucks. And then I can improve on the next version with all of that information in hand, which will be good. What I'm going to do now is go around the edge of the base plate and start working on the seam that's going to go around the outside. And then once we get that all cleaned up, we'll do registration, trim the edges, hot glue down some walls for a box. Well, I guess we have to figure out the seam line first, huh? Complicated. Okay. Well, one step at a time. Yeah, I do think we need to make the second seam. Says I. So the seam could go two ways that I can see that would make sense. I did a ton of research on actually injection molding and how the molds for that were made, and tried to consider those things making this, even though I know that silicone is much more forgiving. This is something that I eventually want to have some kind of hard mold for if it works out. You want the negative for the pivot cup to pull this way. So the two places you could have the seam would be along this ridge here, and then you'd have one half and the other half. And that would work in silicone. And I'm not going to recreate this part exactly when I go on to make the final one, so can reconsider that. That would probably work. I don't think that's too drastic of an overhang. The other option would be to do something like this. I don't know, I think that's just going to be a nightmare, honestly. Okay, well we'll do the first thought that I had and see where that takes us. Yeah, makes me a little nervous. I'm going to build up from the base. I'm going to do my edge first in a rough way and then backfill, because I don't actually need to fill all this in. I just need to make a seam between the box that's going to exist and, or not a seam, but a wall between the box and the seam that I want. So this can be hollow, which is good, because I used up a whole bunch of my clay already. And then we'll do this half first. We'll remove that wall. We'll pour this half. Get those nice and level, hopefully. Flip the box over and do the other side. Yeah, works in theory. Yeah. Same in business. Okay. Guys, mold making is stressful. So good. So good. I don't know, man. Again, I'm not sure how important the finish on the seam lines is between the mold halves. Maybe it's not important. But I mean, it's probably not important. But I would rather be safe than sorry at this point. I think I'm even going to go in and just do registration on these parts now before I close everything up. Seen a lot of people be really thorough with this, so I'm just kind of following suit. I still don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Shoot, how am I going to do this? Bollocks. How am I going to do this? I have this small tool with a round end. I can't actually leverage the loop tool to get into this surface here. I'm just gonna dent it with this and hope for the best. Amateur hour, guys. Amateur hour. Alright, I'm going to close the box up and do the rest of it, and I'll come back when battery power exhaust. Finished up making this first third of the mold, and I just wanted to give you guys a quick view on what it looks like. Managed to make walls and registration marks all the way around. Now we're going to fill it with silicone.
Ooh, bright pink.
So the next morning I ended up tilting the mold because I didn't want to use a ton of silicone to get it covered, and I didn't need to. So this helped make sure that the part was covered, but I was using less of the rubber. Just gonna cut this little piece here. You see, is that secured? Cool. Ooh, it pops right off. Oh, that's fun. Neato. My registration, some of it seems to have worked. I'm not surprised that all of it didn't. Yeah. It smells funny. It smells like Halloween? Maybe it's because of the masks. Ooh, it's rubbery. Is like almost completely by feel at this point, which is admittedly very strange. I'm just trying to smooth out the surface of the clay a little bit. I hope that stays. It might not.